So there was a lot of talk, especially during the pre-referendum and after the referendum, of how much, especially on the right and the Brexiteers, made a massive fuss of British citizenship. And of course, Theresa May infamously called people who called themselves Europeans citizens of nowhere. And I think this is becoming more and a more clear right way of viewing this. And it's very clear that the right have glommed onto this idea. But if you look at this historically, borders and the way that we do it now of literally watching down to like the single person crossing through our borders is a very, very recent phenomenon. You can go back through history, and at one point in history, you could get on a boat, set and sail anywhere you wanted. Borders were set up originally to watch for mainly armies and, incoming marauders. That was originally the function of border patrol. But unfortunately, we have now taken, and especially the right has taken this to new extremes, seeing literally any potential immigrant to any country as some sort of threat to the precious identity that they have built up. And this has become to a point where it has become a commodity to the right wing. And this is how they tend to sell it. So anyone who gets this commodity, they feel tarnishes their own, their own commodity of it. So that's what we're going to discuss today. But before we jump into today's article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And thank you to all the people that do support me that way. So, on with the article then. So, this comes from The Guardian. The title is, "Why is the right obsessed with defending borders? Because it sees citizenship as a commodity." I know that the left and all the gatekeepers on Twitter will become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, the Fox News host Tucker Carlson recently said on his show. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening actually, by accusing the Democratic Party of trying to replace the current electorate with, quote, more obedient voters from the third world. The prominent conservative commentator shows that while Donald Trump may have left the White House, Trumpism is still alive and kicking. Carlson has already faced condemnation from Jewish groups and calls to resign over his seeming endorsement of the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, the false claim which has motivated fascist mass murderers from El Paso, Texas to Christchurch, New Zealand, that governing elites have conspired to undermine the majority white populations by encouraging immigration. His employer defended him by pointing to his words during the segment, that white replacement theory, no, this is a voting rights question. But it's just the most extreme example so far of the US populist right's growing rhetorical assault on the Biden administration. Since last year, the right has focused its attacks on border crossings at the frontier with Mexico, attempting to blame the continuing displacement of people from Central America on Biden's recent tentative liberalization of migration policy. The president, according to Trump, is guilty of reckless eliminating our border security measures, an attack line that echoed by several other prominent Republicans and the conservative media outlets in recent weeks. These claims are clearly overheated, as journalist Als Hernandez points out in the Washington Post. The US-Mexico border is currently far from open, but the resurgence shows how the central idea of a border crisis remains to the populist right, even while it bears little relationship to the actual reality on the ground. The same thing is true in Europe. While governments normally of the centre still allow their policies to be shaped by the populist backlash to the refugee crisis of 2015, even through the number of the refugees entering Europe today is far lower. Authorities in Italy, Malta and Greece continue to obstruct refugees at sea, while Denmark's, whose centre-left government was elected in 2019 after stealing its right-wing populist rival's platform on refugee policies, has revoked resident permits for some 189 Syrian refugees on the spurious grounds that it is now, quote, safe to return to some parts of Syria, such as Damascus. The UK government, meanwhile, has unravelled a new draconian plan to restrict the rights of asylum seekers who enter the country without permission, in response to last year's moral panic over the small boats crossing the channel. The right will usually defend such positions on the grounds of security, while the left correctly attacks the xenophobia and racism on which they are partly founded. But there is another way to understand the particular role of this border crisis as it plays out in our current politics. The economist Marco Bovalnak has argued the importance of seeing citizenship not just for who it excludes, but for the benefit it confers on the holders, as a crucial factor in shaping the way that the rich world relates to the rest of the globe. In recent decades, according to him, your place of birth has become an increasingly important predictor of your income, as opposed to the class or ethnic background. This has led to the phenomenon he terms citizenship rent, or the relative privileges that citizens of wealthy countries receive. For example, higher wages than someone doing the same job in a middle-income country, simply by accident of geography. Since 2008, as the top 1% have hoovered up increasing amounts of wealth, while the living standards of most people in the West have stagnated. Defending the relative privileges conferred by citizenship has become an increasingly attractive proposition to many voters. For the top 1%, citizenship is literally a commodity to be bought and sold. The global trade in passports is now worth an estimated 20 billion a year. For most inhabitants of wealthy countries, however, it is far more symbolic. Something that populists promise to aggressively defend, though the harsh treatment of migrants deemed to threaten these privileges. The History of Ideas Malcolm Bull has identified this dynamic in 2016 at the outset of the populist surge, and it continues today. The border crisis is what populists' right use to rally voters to its cause, an implicit promise that it will protect their interests by maintaining global inequality. This also helps explain the apparent contradictory approaches taken by governments who make border crackdowns at the same time as they actively encourage other forms of immigration. The current UK government is a case in point. Its attack on the human right to asylum has unfolded at the same time it makes a show of offering a safe haven to Hong Kong residents with overseas UK citizenships who want to flee China's dismantling of the liberal democracy within the former British colony. As many as 300,000 people from Hong Kong are expected to resettle in the UK in the next few years under the special visa scheme launched in January. Immigrants from Hong Kong have a genuine need for protection. Only recently, the former politician Nathan Law was rightly granted asylum in the UK, but so do people from other countries which are often used and described as historical ties to Britain, such as Iraq. One reason the government has been so open in the case of the Hong Kong may be because of the wealth and skills that people are expected to bring with them. One survey found the typical immigrant has a university degree and an average salary of over £30,000 a year. Home Office guidance for the visa scheme states that an immigrant from Hong Kong must be able to support themselves in the UK for 6 months without access to public funds. Wealth barriers are typical condition of UK visas. So the reason this apparent openness coexists with the authoritarian posturing on boats in the Channel is because the government is treating citizenship as an asset whose value on the global market needs to be maintained. This may seem like common sense to some, yet, as the Biden administration is now discovering, as for long as the global inequality on which the system rests continues, the image of the border crisis will retain a powerful mobilizing tool for the populist right. And I think that's completely right, 100%. I think this is, and we saw this absolutely well in play during the whole Brexit debate. I mean, it's shocking that now you're a British citizen, you actually have less rights and less abilities than someone who lives in France, Ireland, Denmark, Germany, you name any country that's in the European Union. They have far more rights than we do, and our British, ness in all this, the British, passport has become worth less. But at the moment, I don't think the right has cottoned onto that, and it almost really is a sense of, could we turn this round from a leftist perspective, potentially at a next time this comes up to rejoin the European Union and that fight to happen? Can we say that and use the right's very own rhetoric against them in that attack? I don't know. It's possible. It is possible. I don't know, again, how you do it. That's something that I definitely have to think on. But I do think it's possible. I do think it's possible in a way that we can do it. But again, we'll have to wait and see. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link. And as always, we'll see you all next time.